Good morning. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Mountain Vista Unitarian Universalist Congregation, a beloved community where all are welcome. Gay, straight, trans, the whole LGBTQ community, all ages, ethnicities, and seekers. Seekers from traditions as old as paganism, Buddhism, and Judaism, and as young as deism, theism, and religious humanism. We even let in some liberal Christians. Whatever your path is, we are glad you are walking it alongside of us. We are stronger because you are here. That includes those here in person in our spiffy new sanctuary in Tucson, Arizona, and those joining us virtually online. Our Contigo guests are here today, which is a joy for us. Kaznell and baby Kerwins are here, and we're glad and to welcome them as well. Our team is still led for a few more weeks by our interim minister, the Reverend Dr. Samantha Wilson. We are graced with music director Chris Tackett, and today's pastoral associates are Robin Bissell, and me, Monica Bauer. Let's take just a moment at the beginning of our time together to recall briefly the week's sorrows. The terrible, terrible, tragic shooting yesterday. The white supremacist hate crime against our African American brothers and sisters. We grieve with them. And we also recall, among all the sufferings in the world, too many to list, the terrible tragedy going on every single moment of every single day in the Ukraine. Again, so many sorrows, too many to list. As we saunter up to the eventual lighting of the chalice by Robin, who is slightly less afraid of burning the church down than I am, so she gets that job, I'd like to say a few words about the only portion of the Hebrew Bible to inspire a gold record. And apparently we're getting some percussion accompaniment as well, because I'm talking about music here, so that's just lovely. I'd like to say a few words about the only portion of the Hebrew Bible to inspire a gold record and a song that every American over age 50 knows by heart. The book is attributed to a fellow named Ecclesiastes, which is a mistranslation of the original Hebrew, Kohelet, which means leader. The book written by the leader, as we enter this season of saying goodbye to one of our leaders. Kohelet, the leader, is the one who calls everything vanity. Vanity, vanity, everything is vanity, which when I was little thought that was the mirror place where my mother put her makeup on. Vanity, vanity, everything's vanity. It seems like it's saying that all things are one big vain ego trip. Vanity, vanity, vanity. But turns out the better translation of that word is not vanity, but vapor. Most of the achievements of this world are in this sense vanity because they are like vapor that disappears in the air like that. Vapor. And verily, everyone here who has a 401k understands how this applies to the stock market this week. Everything is vanity, everything is vapor that disappears into the air like that, and even unto Bitcoin. And this is also vanity. The The thing I love about Kohelet is that even as this author grumpily gives up on trying to figure everything out, the author is sort of Zen and sort of pagan and therefore sort of Unitarian. The book is a poetry of pairing, a list of opposites that attract. Life is a series of cycles. Things will be repeated. There will be patterns. Humans and animals are all in the same blue boat, all subject to the rhythm of the natural world. It prefigures the opening number of the Broadway musical The Lion King, a majestic circle of life, repeating and repeating. You can string together all the philosophical arguments ever made by every PhD, and you still won't know much of anything that doesn't eventually disappear into the vapor like that. But the poetry of Kohelet, the leader, still pulls us right in. It's the same poetry that grabbed the great Pete Seeger by the scruff of the neck until Pete agreed to make a song out of it. To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. Whether you see this as wisdom or grumpiness or undiagnosed depression, it's up to you. But the poetry remains, and it's so persuasive in its way, and so wise, much wiser than any argument. And so, as our chalice is lit, and we begin to say our good goodbyes to our beloved leader, our Kohelet, we hear the old words of the ancient wisdom poetry again. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time for every purpose under heaven. And may the Unitarians add, blessed be.
This morning's hymn is not a particularly familiar one, but it's an easy tune, and the words will be up on the screen. And it's number 51, if you have a hymnal handy. Lady of the season's laughter, in the summer's warmth be near, when the winter follows after, teach our spirits not to fear, hold us in your steady mercy, Lady of the turning year. Sister,
we are. Part of me wants to just stand here and take it in. Not a compelling reflection, though. Perhaps, maybe. I do feel in my own self a sense of arrival. We've arrived together somewhere, and I have been thinking a lot about how I arrived to you and how you arrived to me. First is that interim ministry, as you may have heard, is a ministry of change. So when we think about the next 2 years, if the job is done well, in 2 years, I will leave. And in 2 years, you will be calling and celebrating a settled minister. The nature of my time with you is such that it must end in 2 years. But when I think about interim ministry as a time of change, I think, wow, they've been through so much change already. Yeah. Are you tired? Yeah, you can say yes. Thanks, Jane. Jane's nodding. Are you tired? Part of me pictures actually a little moment I want to have with you, imagining that some of you are like, please, could we feel settled already? Could we feel clear already? Could we know what we're doing already? Does that feel true? Yeah. Some of you might be going, we have so much new things to do together. There's so much work to be done. There's so much change to be had. There's so many things we can create and do differently. I'm so ready for more change. Jane's nodding again. Jane, you hold all complexity. Yes, this is the moment that we have found ourselves in, a tired moment. For those of you who feel wary of more change or weary of the change you've already gone through, I want to say, I feel you. I feel you. Now, I am reminded of one time in California during the divorce of my mother and father. My father and I were keeping our relationship barely alive. And he had a brilliant idea to do that. Let's go on a camping trip up the Sierra Nevada mountain range where we visit all of the weird things we never visit when we're headed to Yosemite National Park. It was a very dad move. We're going to visit all the weird things. So he piled into his car, and one of the weird things he wanted to show me was a fault line. So there go my dad and I. We walk to this fault line in a parking lot where there are no other people, because it's one of the weird things. And as we get to the fault line, we're looking at a crack in the earth that we cannot see the bottom of. Now, I remember looking to my dad, and I remember saying, Dad, how deep is it? Well, Sam, it's really deep. Thank you, Dad. And as he walked away, I remember getting down on my belly, and I remember ever so carefully peering over the edge in wonder, belly to ground. This is an image for us. In interim ministry. We will be a people belly to the ground to pay attention to what is changing, what we do not know, and what we cannot predict together. Trusting that if we can stay at the threshold of revelation, something will emerge that we could not have forced if we had tried too quickly or gone away. I promise to you that I will be a loving and a curious minister, and that I will be with you belly to the ground. Will you join me?
Pass them out to all of you, I apologize. Returning to the Sea, a personal reflection by Catherine Senghas, lovingly edited for time and relevance. A harbor pilot comes aboard sea vessels to aid in navigating dangerous, unfamiliar, or congested waters. They lend expertise and experience specific to the navigational situation at hand. Imagine you are the captain and crew of a large and sophisticated ship, wary of obstacles under the surface or in the dark that you may not easily be able to see, unfamiliar with the channels and relying on maps and markers. A pilot comes on board who knows these waters well and is eager to help you have a smooth passage. But it is not the pilot's ship. And you know that the time the pilot will spend with you is fairly short and focused. An interim minister is quite a lot like a harbor pilot. A congregation finds itself coming into a time between settled ministries. An interim minister comes on board to aid in the navigation of that temporary harbor. It's a time of reflecting, retooling, provisioning, and staffing for the next sea adventure. Navigating the interim time is a partnership between the vessel's crew and the harbor pilot, and their mutual success is ultimately a function of communication and trust. Especially in the beginning, communication is essential as the interim minister learns about the ship, sometimes even about where the parts came from. People tell the interim minister their stories of when and why they joined this church, where they hoped this journey might take them, what it has been like so far. The interim minister hears tales of good times and hard times, both personal and institutional, what is precious, and what people hope will be kept on board for a while, and what they might be ready to throw overboard. In some ways, the congregation remains much as it was when the interim minister arrived. In other ways, it is likely to change significantly during an interim ministry. And while the interim minister and congregation work on the interim tasks, they carry on with the regular work of ministry. Sunday worship, the perennial rituals, helping children and youth develop religious literacy, rites of passage, fundraising. And after a couple of years, they may settle into a routine together. They come to know what to expect of each other. Life together becomes comfortable, predictable, almost enough to make the impending change of ministry feel uncomfortable. Almost. There's a perfect quote to describe this situation that seems to be attributed to several people, which simply means that the point is blindingly obvious. A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are built for. As every interim minister knows, serving as a harbor pilot is a privilege, and it has never been the interim minister's ship. The time does come to wish the congregation fair winds and many blessings on the journey ahead.
A few weeks ago, we gave some thought to a song by John Lennon. I'd like to lift up a different song by Lennon and McCartney in our season of goodbyes. Maybe you'll recognize it. There are places I remember all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better. Some have gone and some remain. All these places had their moments with lovers and friends I still can recall. Some are dead and some are living. In my life, I've loved them all. I've said goodbye to a lot of people in my life. I bet you have too. Sometimes we say we'll keep in touch, knowing that most likely we won't. But if you're lucky enough to lead a rich life, a life full of connections, you know that no farewell is a forever farewell because we carry them with us, don't we? Some are stuffed in our emotional back pockets. We think they are gone until someone says, "Remember that time when?" So I'd like to invite us all into a moment of gratitude for all the good goodbyes that we've all had in our lives. After Robin and I describe a person worth remembering, we will invite you, the beloved community, to respond by saying, "I remember them." It may be meaningful to do this with your eyes closed, imagining the faces of those you still remember, punch drunk with gratitude. The person who really saw me as a child, I remember them.
The person who gave me the advice I needed,
I remember them. The person who was there when I was deeply grieving, I remember them.
the person who affirmed my right to be,
I remember them. The person who forgave me when I felt unforgivable, I remember them.
the person who loved me when I felt unlovable,
I remember them. The person who surprised me with joy, I remember them.
the person who saw what and who I could be,
I remember them. The person who told me to take myself less seriously, I remember them.
the person who told me to take myself more seriously,
I remember them. The person who showed me how to die, I remember them.
the person who showed me how to live,
I remember them. Shall we join together in saying, we remember them all with gratitude? We remember them all with gratitude.
No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since love prevails in heaven and earth. How can I keep from singing?
How can I keep from crying? I'm curious if you'd all do me a favor. I'd like you to break the rules, but I'm on my way out and you fired me already, so it doesn't matter. And Lee, I didn't ask you to do this, but if you could bring up gallery view for me. And while Lee is doing that, the thing I want you to break the rules on for me is just to pull your mask down for a second so I can actually see your face. And gallery, I know you're out there. I know you're out there. Okay, masks back. Mask back. I have an offering I want to make for you. You haven't done a woven basket or a wooden bowl offering here in this room yet, and you're still not going to. The offerings are still outside because one of the gifts of our time together has been grand experimentation with new ways of doing things. And you've given so much permission to me and your PA team to play. You've been a playground. Oh, and there's our gallery. There you are. We're looking at you, gallery. You wave. Let me see you. Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Thank you. So I'm giving you something today. It's a reverse offering. The bowl's going to come through the audience, and you're going to take something out, and you're going to put it in your wallet. Deal? There's only one answer. Yeah, here you go. That's it. And for you who are at home, we're going to put it in the chat box. And when you come and visit me here at the office one last month, or I can mail it to you, whatever you prefer, so you can have it in your wallet too. I'm going to give you my favorite little poem. It's a poem I carry very close to me from Raymond Carver. And the words off the top of my head are this. And did you get what you wanted from this life? Even so, I did. And what was it that you wanted? To call myself beloved, to feel myself beloved on the earth. A couple of weeks ago, we were at Borderlands, and we were standing with Borderlands in their time of change as they are about to welcome an interim minister. And I shared that interim ministry is strange. Why love something that's pre-fired, those sitting ducks? Why love something that leaves you? And I was reminded of a therapist that worked with me and my ex-husband at the beginning of our marriage. And that therapist said to us, you will leave each other, either by choice or by death. You will leave each other. Loving something includes loving its ending. So this is my love message to you for your wallet. Yes, it is a reminder to give generously in the future, but it is also a reminder that you are beloved, and I have loved you. The offering will be given. I have here the notes, the exact notes of that first sermon. And I have to tell you, I was an overachiever that day. OMG. When I came back to look at this in preparation for our conversation together today, one of these final conversations that we will have together, I wanted to see what I was thinking back then. Oh my God. Pages and pages of notes. I even included my own footnotes in my notes. But what I remember of that first service is that I told you the story of earthquake country. Does anyone remember that service? I told you about my niece and my nephew, my nibblings, my gender-neutral term for them both, my nibblings. And they had visited from Arizona to Southern California, and we are earthquake country there, 10,000 earthquakes a year. And it was their first time ever experiencing an earthquake. They were seated at the table, innocent children, having a dinner with their aunt and uncle and friend, and then suddenly the room started to shake. And what I remember of that was that we all had very different responses to a room shaking. Some of us were ready to run out the door, totally bolting from the dinner table. Others of us acted like nothing was happening, just eating our meal calmly. And then another move was, well, shouldn't we go down? Shouldn't we move closer to the earth? And the awareness that these children at the table were learning from us how to deal with change right there in the moment. And I shared with you this phrase that churches are revelation factories. These spaces we choose to be in are perfectly designed to push all of your buttons and reveal all of the ways you seek belonging and healing in your own life. So here is the place that more healing or more harm can take place. And we reveal this to each other all the time. And so the move we make when it is interim, when we are explicitly shaking the room, is to move down closer to the earth, belly to the ground, leaning over a chasm, totally unaware that a novel coronavirus was inside of it and about to emerge for 2 years. Now, this service is called A Good Goodbye. It is one of my last 3 services with you, and I leave you in less than 5 weeks. And good goodbyes, an understanding of what makes a good goodbye, emerges from people who think a lot about how to die. What are the things that allow us to die fully, in life-giving ways? And what kind of conversations do we need to have when one is dying? And there's 4 conversations. We name our longings and our fears. We name our memories and our gratitude. We acknowledge our regret and take accountability. We give a blessing, and then we say goodbye. An interim is very much like a death. Some of you know and some of you don't know, one of the guidelines we practice to ensure the health of your future ministry with Reverend Matthew and to ensure my health as I move forward is that I refrain from communication with any of you for the next 2 years. So for the next 2 years, there is a space between us of mystery and wonder, not unlike a death. So I want to start us off because this is a conversation I hope I get to have with each of you. I encourage you to schedule on my Calendly a goodbye conversation or email me. But I want to tell you about my goodbye conversation. And the first is my longings and my fears. So the first thing I want to tell you is where the hell I'm going. I'd like to show you that I am moving to a safe location, a beautiful house. This is where me and Drew and Joy are moving to Oakland, California, to live on property with a bunch of fabulous friends who are therapists and restorative justice practitioners in prisons, the work I used to do. And these friends who live 10 feet away from this house, who own that dog in the corner, are desperate to co-parent Joy. And I invite you to know how joyful that makes me and Drew, that after 3 years of being so far from family, we are moving right into their backyard. And you got us there. You were family to us for 3 years. From baby showers to dissertations to goodbyes and weddings. Thank you. Thank you. I'm also part of something I want to acknowledge, which is I am part of the Great Resignation. Who has heard of this? I am part of the Great Resignation. Great Resignation is the understanding that after COVID, a lot of people are reconsidering their choices. That this has been a particularly unique time for any of us, let alone those of us who are working in this new world. And part of this is that you and I had a very unique interim experience. We could not have predicted COVID. We could not have predicted that we would need to survive a cultural trauma with each other. That made our interim very unique, and therefore our goodbyes equally more tearful. We survived something. Suddenly, you had to transform your community into an online experience that continued to deepen belonging while you built a church, while none of us knew what would happen. And as a minister, it was interesting to hold you for 2 years in the uncertainty. And I think it is time next year for me to navigate my own. So I have chosen not to pursue another congregational position. Partly also because I am hungry to put my belly to the ground of my own life. There is a unique reality that as an interim minister finishes their time with a congregation, the congregation settles, but the interim minister is now in transition. And now I seek a year of bold soul deepening. It was a year of bold soul deepening. Do you remember my divorce cottage sermon? Anyone remember that one? Thank you. I gave you the divorce cottage sermon when you decided to buy this building. We had a congregational vote over at Beautiful Savior, and you agreed to buy this building, and I told you about my experience moving into a divorce cottage. It was that year, a year where I decided not to fill my days with work, that called me here. What will happen in another year where the focus is receptivity rather than productivity? I also want to say that I hope you embrace Reverend Matthew with a curiosity of how COVID changed his ministry. It might be a time for us to reevaluate lots of aspects of ministry. I have memories and gratitude for you. One is that I have lived through congregations where there was incredible mistrust of leadership. You have given so much trust to leadership, myself included, that I have been healed by your care and your loving and your willingness to experiment. And I want to honor you in particular after your candidating week. I know candidating week was a roller coaster of emotions for you. And what I celebrate about how you did it was that even in the midst of joy and dissent, you stayed in the process together. You stayed in the process together. This is gold. It cannot be understated what it is like for a people to feel safe enough to dissent, and then safe enough to hear and receive dissent, to meet dissent, to cherish dissent, and to stay in it. You are so far ahead of all the other churches. Even UUCT, we have a UUCT guest here. No offense, Reverend Bethany. This is gold. I say this to you as someone who consults with congregations in conflict. If you have the capacity to tell each other that you disagree or that you dissent or that you have conflict, and if you have the capacity to receive it, and then if you have the capacity to stay with each other in it because you believe that if you stay in it long enough, something emerges in the crack in the earth, you're set. I think this is an incredible aspect of who you deeply are, and I celebrate it, and I am so grateful for it. This other piece of gratitude is to the support you gave me in my own life, the support you gave me in having a child, and then last week, the support you gave me in not having a child. The support you gave me in writing this dissertation, which I hold for emphasis. I also hold it because two of you pried it out of my hands, requesting to read it, and you did. What was interesting is after two of you pried it out of my hands, after I said, I'm very vulnerable, this is very nervous for me, you read it. Both of you took me to coffee, and you highlighted the same word. The two people highlighted the same word. The word in the dissertation was building a culture of indisposability, a culture in which none of you, in which none of us can be gotten rid of, and a culture where all of us need all of us to make it. Those words, all of us need all of us to make it, those were the words we spoke before we shut down at Flower Communion. Do you remember that? Jean-Bor and I were the PAs that day, trying to create a flower communion that was somehow 6 feet apart. He got very long-stemmed carnations. And we touched them and sang, all of us need all of us to make it. And that's what you did. That's what you did. I have regret and things I need to be accountable for. The first is that there are so many ways that I show up in my ministry that can feel busy and inaccessible. I run 1,000,000 miles a minute, and I know there were times there were unanswered texts and unanswered emails and unanswered phone calls. I acknowledge the ways that I showed up really busy at times. I'm celebrating that you have called a minister who knows how to do 10-year ministries. Reverend Matthew has done 2 10-year ministries. I cherish the possibility that you will meet and that you are excited by someone you have called who likes to stay in it for the long haul and knows how to. I also want to acknowledge that there were times in the midst of our work together where I just did it without telling anyone how else to do it. COVID was like that. What I'm excited for about you in your future is the opportunity to build the kinds of structures that will help you sustain this organization. And it's worth taking the time to do together. There's a rule that it's a 30 times rule. If you do something more than 30 times a year, you should probably train other people to do it. And when you train someone else to do it, it'll take 30 times as long to train them as it would have to you just to do it by yourself, which is often why we don't train other people to do things. But I want to tell you, and what I hope for you is, take the 30 times. This is a time to build the leadership in the congregation so that the minister is not just the center, but the minister is the facilitator of the ministries you do together. My blessing and my goodbye to you is that I pray that you thrive in the intimacy of your cracked openness. I have met you to be an intimate people. The DNA of this congregation was at Claire's kitchen. You come around tables and personal conversations and closeness, and it is what is so sexy about you. Your willingness to be deep, not just superficial, is what makes this a sanctuary. And it's in you to do it. I want to offer this little closing story that I think now I understand looking back on that first sermon where I said, "Are you tired yet?" And Jane raised her hand every single time. Are you tired of change? Are you desperately wanting change to stop? I have to say, unfortunately, I think that in the DNA of this congregation is an adaptability. I think it's your superpower. I think one thing that made you thrive through COVID is that you already were in the crack. Whereas other congregations thought they were on solid ground, Mountain Vista had been in the crack a long time. There's beauty in that. Last week, me and Drew and Joy went to Karchner Caverns. Now, we had to take Joy because her daycare closed due to a COVID scare, and I was lamenting this on a Baja 4 call. And up comes Reverend Tina saying, "Well, I live 30 minutes from Karchner Caverns. I will come and play with Joy in the parking lot for 2 hours so that you can take your tour of the caves." So we all went down, meeting Reverend Tina in the parking lot, and Drew and I began the magnificent tour into the heart of these caves. Now, at its apex, the tour guide lines you up at a fault line. But at this point in Karchner Caverns, you're not looking from the top down, you are looking from the bottom up. And when you look at a fault line from the bottom up, crystals, stalactites and stalagmites. And the tour guide, cheeky, said, "If I had a button that could force an earthquake right now, you would be at the safest point possible. If I had a button, I could pass it to each of you and I'd say, push it, push it, push it." And I thought to myself, what a terrible, accurate metaphor for the world we're living in right now. Earthquake, 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 earthquake. But there she was. She said, "They're here in this fault line where the crack seems deepest. These pieces of crystals, chandeliers of the earth have been here through all of it. Thousands of years. Why? Because the crack is the safest place to be." My hope for you is not that you live in cracks forever. I hope you stay a people that when you look at the hills around you, you mountain vistas, what you know to be true within them is jewels. Thank you for letting me be your minister. May it be so.
Thank you so much. Well, after that, there's really only one way we can possibly end this. This is one of those songs that everyone knows the first phrase and almost nobody knows the rest of it. So we're going to do it twice, so won't you stand with me and sing? Yes, it's that song. Just sing a song and bring the sunny weather. Happy trails to you till we meet again.
Just a couple quick pieces of business before we close. The wooden bowls and the woven baskets will be outside the doors for your generous donations. And also a reminder that next week is our congregational meeting. So after the service, you will all be able to stay for that. And after our service today, you're invited to stay for cool beverages out on the patio or in the Oasis room. The piece that we chose for closing today is called A Goodbye in Every Hello by Trisha Brennan. Is there not a goodbye in every hello? A death in every birth, an ending in every beginning? Doesn't everything change? What comfort can you give us, O Eternal One? We do not know how to be at peace with all the change. We hold on tight to what is now, willing to stay just so. We ask and we listen. We listen to anything you might say or show to help us loosen our fearful grip on what we wish to claim as ours to keep. We listen for a voice that might say, "Be not afraid. I am with you through it all. Stay in love with it all, from one day to the next, from one change to the next. Love what is joyful, love what is hard, love what leaves, love what comes next. Love it all. Then you will be all right."